This is the Anbernic RG406V, the latest in handheld retro devices from Anbernic. There are going to be tons of review videos about this, but I wanted to take a different approach for my video. I wanted my video to be different. So I posted this on Twitter, on Threads, and here on YouTube asking you, what is it that you want to know about this device? I've gone through the questions that people are asking, and in today's video, I'm going to answer them. These are some of my favorite videos to make because it feels more like I'm having a conversation with all of you. So a huge thank you to everyone who took the time to send in these thoughtful questions. Before we get to the questions, let's hit the stats real quick. The Anbernic RG406V has a 720p 4-inch 4x3 screen, which will be fantastic for retro console gaming. It comes in 3 different colors. There's transparent black, beige white, and gray. Anbernic sent me a white one. I don't know if this is going to come through on my video, but the 40XX is a brighter white than the 406V. I also really don't like the white controls with the white shell because the two white colors don't really match up very well on the 406V, so I would prefer to have more of a contrast, like black controls with a white shell. But that is a personal preference thing, and if I were personally picking one, I would go with the transparent black one. The CPU is the same one that's in the RG Cube. It's the Unisoc T820 processor with 8 cores. That means this should be pretty good up to most PS2 games. It has a quad-core Mali G57 GPU, which runs at 800 megahertz and 8 gigs of LPDDR4X RAM. I have to say, these little handhelds are always fun. Just like the sponsor of today's video, BOOT.DEV. Yeah. You can learn how to become a back-end developer using BOOT.DEV, and it can also be fun at the same time. Maybe even as fun as playing your favorite retro games. BOOT.DEV is a way of learning how to be a back-end developer, but they use hands-on lessons that focus on making learning back-end web development using Python and Go programming languages, and they do it fun. BOOT.DEV is designed to feel like an RPG game where you level up your stats as you get better and better at web development. And if you're not sure BOOT.DEV is for you, they have a 30-day no questions asked refund policy and a free demo on every single course that they have so that you can pick the one that's right for you. Not everyone can afford a membership, which is why BOOT.DEV has their content free to read and watch in guest mode, so you can learn for free, but if you want to get the most out of it, a paid membership unlocks hands-on coding, AI assistance, and most importantly, the gamification that makes the learning process enjoyable. And BOOT.DEV also shows you how the instructors wrote the code that you're trying to learn so that you can find solutions for every challenge on the site. So if you want to be a back-end developer or if you're looking to build the skills needed for your next side hustle, click the link in the description down below and use code NerdNest to get 25% off your first month, or if you choose the annual plan, you can get 25% off a whole year. Let's take a look at the front of the device. We've got our D-pad, which is the same D-pad from the RG40XX, which is a very, very good D-pad. I'm glad that they included this one, and I hope that Anbernic devices have this D-pad moving forward because I think it's really good. Then over here, you have your face buttons. The face buttons are a little small. I know that they're like the same size as, as the D-pad, like they're taking up the same footprint. I would have liked these to be, you have all of this screen case real estate here. I would have liked these to be bigger and flatter, but that's just my personal preferences. Then you've got your 2 joysticks. The joysticks have a lot of throw for them for Nintendo Switch style joysticks. I really like the way these feel, and I know that I personally tend not to play joystick games for retro emulation, but these feel good, and whenever you're emulating PS2 games on here, these are going to be great for you. You've got your start and select buttons down here at the bottom. There's start and select buttons. How much can you really say about it? Here in the middle, you've got your home button, which you can set to launch whichever front-end launcher that you want to use. I use Daigisho, and it works really, really well. Over on the left-hand side, we have the Anbernic button, which launches the Anbernic launcher. I pushed this once. I don't really like their launcher, so I will probably never use it again. Then underneath that, you've got your SD card. On the right-hand side, you have your power button down below your volume up and down. And My first instinct was that I didn't like that, but what I find is when I'm playing a game on this, it's much easier for me to reach and hit my volume up and down buttons here. And this feels hard to reach, which is the opposite of what I anticipated because the device is so tall. So I think that they did a good job putting these exactly where they're supposed to be, and you're never going to hit those by accident. Up on the top, we have our USB-C port right there, as well as the intake for our fan. On the back side, we have the exhaust for our fan, or maybe this is the intake and that's the exhaust. I can't remember which off the top of my head right now. But I mean, this device has active cooling. I don't know that you really need active cooling on a device like this, but you know, it can handle that, and that's great. We've got our R1 and R2 buttons and our L1 and L2 buttons. These are placed pretty well. They are digital triggers, not analog triggers, which is something that you want to make sure that you keep in mind. The other thing that I'll say about it is I have a tendency to hit L1 and R1 by accident quite often when I'm trying to hit L2 and R2. This is something that you'll do when you're like doing save states and that kind of thing. And I keep hitting the wrong buttons just because of the way that this is laid out. These feel just a little too sensitive for me. And so I do hit those at the wrong time every once in a while. If we take a look at the bottom of our device, we've got our headphone jack and we've got two downward firing speakers. And you can also see these huge rounded grips. And that's the standout, like the biggest win for this device, I think, is how huge the grips are. It makes it really, really comfortable to hold for long periods of time, but the thickness of this device, thanks to those grips and the inclusion of the long throw joysticks, means this is probably the least pocketable Anbernic device that I have ever used. The device also has gyro as well as USB-C out for up to 1080p on a TV. Just keep in mind you do have to plug it into the TV first and then start the game. I tried starting the game and then plugging it in, and it doesn't work that way. You'll also have to rearrange your controller inputs if you're not playing on device, if you're like, say you're using Bluetooth, in order to make the Bluetooth controller player one. And you also can't charge the device while you're plugged into the TV. So make sure that you've topped off before docking your handheld. All right, let's move on to the questions. Lisa asks, is it worth buying considering everything that's around this price, especially if you already have a handheld with this power? And I think my answer to that question is it depends. It depends on how happy you are with your current retro gaming solution. If you feel like it's comfortable and you have the power that you need to emulate the games that you want to play, then picking up this one isn't particularly compelling. Is picking up the 406V going to solve a problem for you? Is it more pocketable? Is it more powerful? Is the screen better than what you have right now? And that question is going to be a different answer for everyone. I have to say that if you are looking to play things, like if you already have the RG Cube, I don't think that this is necessarily an upgrade, but there are definite differences. Retro Pocket asks, why do they have to put analog sticks on every handheld these days? And I have to say, there are a lot of devices out there that don't have thumbsticks. One of my favorite is the Miyoo Mini Plus, or the Anbernic RG406V XSSP, which is very hard to say. The difference is that those devices are less powerful, but they're also cheaper. They have different chipsets, and the 406V has a more powerful chipset, which can emulate up to PS2 games. If you're getting less powerful handhelds that are generally cheaper, you'll usually get capped out at the end of the 8 and 16-bit era. Maybe you'll be able to do some N64 stuff or some PS1 stuff, but the higher-end consoles, you're going to have trouble emulating. If you're playing those higher-end console games, and you might need joysticks in order to play. So you have to ask yourself, which games am I interested in emulating? If it's higher end stuff like PS2, etc., then the 406V might be a good fit for you. But if your nostalgia going back to the 8 and 16-bit consoles, then you're probably fine with other devices that are less powerful but more pocketable thanks to the lack of joysticks. So it all depends on what games you want to play. Ernie asks, can you do a size comparison? Yeah, absolutely. This thing is pretty massive, and I would say for retro handhelds, this is the least pocketable one that I've had my hands on so far. But here you can see it next to a pack of cards. Here it is on the side profile. You can take a look at it next to the Miu Mini Plus. Here it is next to the RG Cube. Here it is next to the Steam Deck. And here's a Game Boy cartridge, just to give you a visual for the screen size. What's really weird to me is that the Anbernic RG406V, which also has a 4-inch screen, if the screen on that feels much larger than on the 406V, because the 406V has giant bezels. It makes the screen seem way smaller than it actually is. And I really wish that Anbernic had made some kind of different choice when it came to the bezels of this thing. Vic Viper asks, looking to buy this as my first retro handheld. I was wondering if it was powerful enough to run 3DS and PSP at 70% catalog. Mostly looking to run Pokemon on 3DS and experience PSP as I never got to. Thank you anyway. I came across your channel last night. You're a character. So first off, I'm a character? I'm not sure how to take that, but okay. Anyway, Provis83's reply pretty much nails it here. This is not a good device for those kind of systems because the screen is a 4:3 aspect ratio. I think you're much better off using a system that has a 16:9 aspect ratio to emulate those games. For me, if I were going to emulate those games, I would probably use a PC handheld because it's far more versatile and it has that 16:9 or 16:10, depending on your PC handheld of choice, aspect ratio, which means you're going to have way more screen real estate because you don't want to have that giant black bars on the top and bottom of your screen. The big issue with devices like that is that they're not super pocketable, but then again, neither is this. That said, I've heard really great things about the Odin series of devices as well as Retroid, but I don't have any of those devices, so I can't really speak to how well those work over this. Jonathan Earl asks, how is the battery life? This is definitely going to depend on what systems you're emulating and what shaders and filters that you are running. But the 406V has a massive 5,500 milliamp hour battery in it, which means that this thing is going to last all damn day, even with your most demanding games. You can easily get upwards of 8 hours out of this device. If you plug it in at night, I cannot imagine someone burning through the battery on retro games in a day. Speaking of battery life, another thing that I like about this device is they included a charging port that just works. Unlike some of my other retro devices, which require you to use a specific cord to charge, this is just regular USB, and it will charge appropriately no matter which USB cord you plug into it. Though charging does take a few hours, so make sure that you plug it in at night. I will say, since it's Android and not Linux, it seems to lose power during sleep a lot slower than some of the other systems that I have. Ninja Jason asks, is it better than the RG Cube? Better is subjective, but let me talk about the differences. Number one, the Cube has a 1:1 aspect ratio screen, which will be better for arcade games that tend to have a vertical aspect ratio, meaning that the black bars on the sides will be much smaller. This has a 4:3 aspect ratio, so it'll be better for consoles. Secondly, Chad, who replied to you, is right. The 406V has better sticks that don't snap to cardinal directions. So if you're playing games that use sticks a lot, this might actually be better for you. If you're interested, I also have a full review of the RG Cube, and you can check that out linked in the description down below that like button. Mr. Spine Duke asks, is there anything to set this apart from all the other Anbernics that they've released? It's impossible to keep up as a customer. And I have to agree, Anbernic is putting out so many options right now, and a lot of them are so similar, it's really hard to tell what is different about them. So what sets this one apart? Well, number one, Provis is right. The sticks are miles better than the other sticks on Anbernic devices, at least the ones that I've used. The D-pad feels very similar to the D-pad, which is in the 40XX-V, which is very good to hear. That D-pad is great. This also has a 720p screen, so if you're looking for a higher resolution display, that might be important to you. I will say that because this is so chunky, It is really comfortable to use for extended periods of time. I like the form factor, I just don't like the bezels. Chasing Horizons over on Threads asks, those corners look comfortable? Is it as comfy as it looks? And yeah, with this device, you are trading pocketability away for comfort. This thing has huge rounded grips, which I really do like. If you're looking for a retro system that can play up to PS2 games, this is pretty good. That being said, if I'm picking a handheld, I would personally like to go with something with smaller bezels that has less power, more pocketability, and for me, no thumbsticks because I don't care about it. Sean Brent on Twitter asks, why is it so chunk? I love that sentence. The design on these ones aren't too appealing, but would like to see your perspective on it for a casual, everyday use. I do think it is a little bit too bulky. If I were wanting to play a retro system that had more power, I would probably just go overkill and get a Steam Deck or other PC handheld instead. This is fine, but it's huge. And if you already have something this big, then you may as well go a little bit bigger because none of this is really going to fit in a pocket anyway. I mean, you could squeeze it into a pocket, but really, you're not going to. Anyway, I think that you're better off getting a PC handheld if you need the power. That being said, if you need higher end emulation and you do want a smaller form factor than most PC handhelds like the Legion Go, the ROG Ally, Ally X, and Steam Deck, this is probably going to work for you. The biggest benefit that this is going to have is the 720p screen and the very good joysticks over most other retro handhelds. All right, let's talk about what I like and what I don't like about this thing. I think the 720p looks phenomenally great. Is it necessary? Probably not. It might be overkill, but this feels like an overkill kind of device. The thumbsticks are a huge improvement over Anbernic's previous thumbsticks, which always snap to cardinal directions, and the D-pad is the same one that's in the RG406V, which is to say, it's a great D-pad. Might be one of the best D-pads Anbernic's ever put out. I have no complaints there. And the face buttons feel good, though on a device this size, I would have liked larger, flatter face buttons. I would really have liked buttons that are a little bit bigger. The 406V gets a win in the comfort category as well, and the docking experience is really good. What I don't like are the bezels. The bezels are just way too big, and all this extra room on the sides makes for a more comfortable experience, but at the expense of that size. It's just a bit too big for a retro handheld for me. The white doesn't look as white as the 40XX-V, which looks really clean. Like I said before, the docked experience is good, but I wish that you could charge at the same time that you are docked to a TV so that you could just plug this into your TV, have it be your TV emulator, and then unplug it when you want to go someplace. That would be awesome. Either add in a second USB port on this or let this USB port do more than one thing at a time. Overall, I think it's a really great device, but Anbernic has better options out there. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks that you're going to enjoy this one right here. So check it out. And don't forget to check out BOOT.DEV, the sponsor of today's video. From the Nerd Nest, I'm Bill. Stay rad, everybody.